First of all, good morning. I want to be very clear that this is not a spiritual or a religious gathering, even though you might want to call it that or put it into that category, and if you must, you can. Of course, you're all entirely free to do as you will. However, what we're here to talk about, if it is to be put in any category, it would be the category of being human. If we put it in any other category, we limit it to all kinds of extremes that exist within that category. So if we start to talk about things like awakening, enlightenment, liberation, self-realization, and we put it into a category called spiritual or religious, we immediately limit it to extremes or points of view that exist within those categories. In other words, all the descriptions about it will exist within those categories of being spiritual and religious. And thus, the separation, the fragmentation that occurs to dualistic perception will just occur in another way. So what we really have is an anomaly of dualistic perception called spirituality and religion. And, this is all as it is. Throughout human time, and throughout time altogether, there have been ways of describing the pinnacle experience of being human. And during a lot of the time that human beings have been around, those ways of describing who we are as awake or exalted beings or whatever have been spiritual or religious. All I'm saying here is that it is not necessary to delimit them as spiritual and religious. And if it is delimited as being spiritual and religious, it's very likely that there will be extremes adopted. In other words, that there will be certain kinds of behavior that will need to kept in place, certain kinds of thoughts that will need to be kept in place, certain kinds of emotional states that will be kept in place in order for this realization to come about. But if we look into this with just a little bit of discernment, what we can see very readily is that awareness is naturally present. Awareness is naturally present, and that awareness is the basic space of everything. So if we look at it in just this simple way, that awareness is naturally present, this is something every human being can relate to. And if we say awareness is the basic space of everything, that's something else every human being can relate to. Every human being can say, yes, I experience space. Yes, I experience awareness. Well, those two realizations, the direct experience of awareness, and then the experience of basic space, aware basic space, is what self-realization is. And within that, all is contained. All is contained. Any point of view whatsoever is contained. Whether it's spiritual, religious, philosophical, psychological, bread baking, whatever it is, all points of view, no matter what they are aware basic space and nothing else. Just as pure space is entirely uncompounded, infinite and forever existing, so too we are forever uncompounded and existing. Any point of view we have about ourselves, anything we've taken ourselves to be, is simply a point of view of that aware basic space, included within that space, and nothing else. So all of these other terms we've learned to describe who we are, they, of course, are descriptions of who we are, but sometimes they're far too limiting, especially today. Because today, more than ever, we as human beings have a mandate upon ourselves. And that mandate that we have upon ourselves is for all of us to come together as a global human culture, for all of us to stand up for this simple reality of who we are, and for us to tap into the omniscience, the all-knowing wisdom that is the essence of aware basic space to solve the problems of our world. And if we keep talking about ourselves as divided up into all these categories, that can never take place. So, the language that we use in the Great Freedom Teaching is very significant, and it came about very purposefully. It appeared in this way in a very purposeful way. The way in which things described here, it's stripped naked. Everything is stripped naked. There's only the great reality of who we are and nothing else. There's nothing else that needs to be used to describe it. If we want to continue to have our favorite things to do, that's great. If we have a guru we love, if we do all kinds of spiritual practices we love, all that's great. But none of that leads to the attainment of self-realization unless we're resting naturally as awareness, as aware basic space while we're involved in all those practices. Without this direct experience, this direct realization of who we are that's specific to freedom in each perception, I'll say that again, because I noticed some people were distracted. Without this specific direct experience, direct realization of the freedom that is the essence of every single perception, no matter what its label, its quality, or its characteristic, without freedom in that immediate perception of whatever perception arises, there is no freedom. If there isn't freedom in every perception, there is no freedom. If there is not freedom in every perception, then there's some idea about freedom. There's some kind of extreme that's been adopted about what freedom is. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? So, especially today, when for the first time in human history we have more books and information available about awakening than have ever been. Almost every human being today has a wealth of information available about what awakening is. So many of us, we've read all these books and we just end up in a state of confusion. And we end up with a lot of terms to describe the reality of what we are, but very often we don't have the direct experience of that. And we go to certain groups, and I received a letter from one woman, and she said that she had a very profound awakening at the end of a retreat, a certain kind of Buddhist retreat that she did. And she went to her teacher and said, I've had this incredible awakening. She did this after a couple weeks. She said, I've really realized the essence of who I am. I've realized the essence of awareness. And the teacher said, oh no, it's not possible for a new student to do that. It takes years of practice. Well, the starting point for the realization of who we are is that we already are who we are. So if we wanted to have the proper motivation or the proper acknowledgement of what we are, it would be that everyone is already awake, everyone is already enlightened. This is our natural state. And because it is our natural state and it belongs to everyone, that means me too. Do you see what I mean? So this is the starting point. We're not talking about something that is for the elect. If we start to talk about our natural state as something that's for the elect, immediately we're talking about duality. Either everyone is included or no one is included. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you see, with just a little bit of discernment, we really need to look into these things for ourselves. Don't even bank on what I'm saying. You know, just look into it for yourself. Look into your own direct experience. What do you realize to be true about yourself? What is your direct experience of yourself that comes first before all else? What is primal in every single experience you have? What is the essence of every single experience you have? I can tell you what it is, but you're going to need to directly experience it in order to realize it. The essence of every single experience, every single perception, every single point of view is awareness. And that awareness can be called by many names, but the direct experience of it in a human being is most easily described as awareness. Over time, it's been called all kinds of things: Brahman, the Absolute, God, Krishna consciousness, whatever it is. You can have your favorite term. It's okay, but it's all awareness. Whenever we talk about any of these terms as the Absolute, we're talking about awareness, because even if we have one of these terms that we love, like Krishna consciousness or whatever it is, awareness is primal in that. Awareness is the essence of it. The term Krishna consciousness, that description would not occur without awareness of that label. So all the words that are in the dictionary, and even all the words that aren't in the dictionary, because maybe Krishna consciousness isn't in the dictionary, or some of these other terms or phrases like I am the Absolute, those may not be in a dictionary or in a book of phraseology. But no matter what these terms or descriptions are, the commonality in each of them is awareness. So, you know, what we talk about in the Great Freedom Teaching is to approach this epitome matter of who we are, this pinnacle reality of who we are, in one of two ways. One is either just showing up here and conviction will gradually dawn, or maybe it will dawn right away. There's no one way it has to be. It could be suddenly, it could be gradually. It just is whatever it is. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. And the other approach is to rest naturally without seeking anything. To rest naturally for short moments repeated many times. And in resting naturally as awareness for short moments repeated many times, it becomes automatic. So it's as simple as that. It's very straightforward. There is nowhere to get to. The essence of awareness is that it is unborn by nature. It's completely uncompounded. Like the sun, the sun is completely uncompounded. It doesn't have a lot of bits and pieces in it. It's all blazing light. Pure space is entirely uncompounded. It's an infinite, vast expanse. So too is our nature. Our true nature is the vast expanse of infinite basic space. A vast expanse that is pure space, just as the sky is pure space. And all the points of view that occur within that aware basic space are that space and nothing else. They're inseparable from that space, like the color blue is inseparable from the sky. So each point of view, no matter what it is like the flight path of a bird in the sky. It vanishes naturally, leaving no trace. It's like a line drawn in water. No matter how many lines we draw in water, they completely disappear without a trace. And so all points of view that arise within the aware basic space of our awareness are like a mirage and nothing else. even if we took a mirage of anything at all, say it was an oasis in the desert, and it had all of these elements. It had a water well and chairs to sit in and beautiful glasses to drink out of and people running around to wait on us and provide us with all kinds of comforts and quench our thirst. No matter how many elements there were in that mirage, if we tried to grab onto them, there'd be nothing but pure space. And such is the nature of all points of view. All points of view, no matter what they are uncompounded. They are aware basic space and nothing else. And not a basic space that has ever been limited by anything, but rather a basic space that is the vast expanse of pure space, like the infinite sky. So when we start to talk about ourselves in this way, usually, even if we've never heard this before, it has a ring of truth. We can hear the bell pealing. Oh yeah, this sounds right. Even if we've heard it described in many other ways, we may be thinking, yeah, this is a little bit different. It's more basic. I can understand it. So the direct reality of who we are, because it is our true nature or natural state, it is simple, but it's also not overly simple. And it's definitely not overly complicated. So you see, if we look at who we are, and from either of these extremes, oversimplified or overcomplicated, then we're going to get involved in all kinds of points of view about who we are. But if we just rest naturally, rest freely as the essence of every perception, then we realize the only realization there is to have, and that is that we already are basic space, aware basic space, and nothing else. Just because we've been exposed to points of view throughout our lives where we hear over and over again, you're somebody, your name is such and such, you have a history of doing these kinds of things, having these kinds of thoughts, having these kinds of emotional states, and that's your identity, this accumulation of your thoughts and feelings and conduct. And oh yes, there's space all right in the universe, but it's out there, it's separate from you. You're a subject, and all of that out there is an object that you are perceiving as a subject. And then there are all kinds of complex ways of describing who we are as individual human beings, that we have a biology and a physiology, and that we have consciousness, and that consciousness comes about through complex mechanisms of neurology and physiology and all of these other things all compiled together. So you see, we learn all of these points of view about who we are, but once we hear that we are this aware basic space that includes the idea of a personal identity, that includes the point of view of a body, that includes the point of view of a mind, and that all these points of view, no matter what they are equal, then we suddenly feel a great relief because we're no longer striving in every single moment to make sense out of everything, to try to create meaning out of everything. How could meaning ever be created out of a mirage?